Set sail with me as we journey back in time to meet one of the most notorious figures in history, Edward Teach, or as the world came to know him, Blackbeard. With his dark, intense eyes and a thick, wild beard braided with fuses that he'd light before battle, Blackbeard became a walking nightmare for sailors across the Atlantic. Imagine, if you will, seeing this towering figure on the deck of a pirate ship, smoke rising around his face, his eyes piercing through the haze. To most, he was a demon in human form, a legend of fear on the high seas. But who was the man behind this terrifying image? Before he took on the name Blackbeard, Edward Teach was likely born in the late 1600s in the British port town of Bristol. The details of his early life are shrouded in mystery. Some say he came from a wealthy family, while others claim he had little but ambition and a thirst for adventure. What we do know is that eventually he found his way to the Caribbean, a place known for warm weather, rich trade routes, and the constant shadow of piracy. Today, we'll uncover not just the stories, but the mystery of Blackbeard, how he rose to power, his legendary battles, and how his terrifying image lives on. Welcome to the story of the man who became the pirate king of the seas. Blackbeard's journey to infamy began not as a captain, but as a crew member under the notorious pirate Captain Benjamin Hornigold. Hornigold was already known for his merciless raids and bold ambition, and he saw promise in young Edward Teach. Blackbeard quickly rose through the ranks, learning the art of piracy, stealing, intimidating, and seizing power over the seas. Hornigold taught him that being a pirate wasn't just about fighting. It was about creating fear, instilling a legend that could do half the work for you. When Hornigold eventually retired, Blackbeard didn't follow him into peace. Instead, he took control of a powerful ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge. This was no ordinary pirate vessel. It was a massive, heavily armed former French warship that Blackbeard seized and transformed into a floating fortress. He equipped it with 40 cannons, a staggering amount for a pirate ship in those days. With the Queen Anne's Revenge, Blackbeard became nearly unstoppable. He took on a crew of hundreds, making it clear that he wasn't just a pirate. He was a pirate king. This ship was his kingdom, and the seas became his territory. And for a time, it seemed no navy, no captain, and no governor could bring him down. Blackbeard understood something powerful. Terror can be a weapon as sharp as any blade. Imagine being a sailor in the 1700s, your ship creaking across the calm ocean, and suddenly seeing Blackbeard's dark sails appear on the horizon. He didn't need to fire a single cannon to make people surrender. Often the sight of his ship and his face alone was enough. To add to his fearsome reputation, Blackbeard crafted an image of himself as a true demon of the sea. Before battles, he would weave fuses into his beard, lighting them so that smoke would rise around his face, like he was a spirit from the underworld. His eyes would glow fiercely through the haze. Many sailors described him as a ghostly figure, terrifying in every way, like something you'd hear about in a sailor's nightmare. But he didn't stop with appearances alone. Blackbeard's ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, was equipped with 40 cannons, a terrifying sight to any smaller vessel. In battles, he would unleash every cannon in a full broadside, a wall of destruction so powerful that most ships would surrender without a fight. Blackbeard's strategy was to overwhelm his enemies before they even considered resisting. And time after time, it worked. The legend of Blackbeard, the man with the smoking beard, grew with every encounter. Blackbeard's boldest, most audacious move was his blockade of Charleston, South Carolina, in May of 1718. Imagine the entire city cut off from the sea, unable to send or receive supplies. Blackbeard and his fleet positioned themselves right at the mouth of Charleston Harbor, blocking every ship from entering or leaving. Day after day, he held the city in a state of terrified suspense. He captured ship after ship, taking prisoners and looting goods. But what he demanded from the city's officials wasn't gold or treasure. It was medical supplies. Some say this demand was for treating his own crew's injuries or illnesses. Regardless of the reason, Blackbeard's message was clear. He could control the fate of a city if he wanted to. Charleston's officials had no choice but to comply, gathering the supplies and sending them to Blackbeard's ships. When he had what he wanted, he vanished as quickly as he had come, leaving the city shaken. This act wasn't just about supplies. It was a display of raw power. By blockading a major port city, Blackbeard proved he could halt trade and paralyze an entire colony. The name Blackbeard became infamous not only in Charleston but throughout the colonies, spreading fear far beyond the seas he ruled. The colonies couldn't tolerate Blackbeard's reign of terror forever. His blockade of Charleston and continued plundering across the seas forced colonial leaders to take action. Virginia's governor, Alexander Spotswood, finally decided that Blackbeard needed to be eliminated once and for all. He enlisted the help of Lieutenant Robert Maynard, a skilled and determined officer of the British Navy. Maynard prepared his men, knowing they would face a formidable opponent. Blackbeard's ship and crew were powerful, and his reputation alone was enough to shake even the strongest soldiers. But Maynard was resolute. After weeks of searching, he finally found Blackbeard anchored off the coast of Ocracoke Island, North Carolina. Maynard's plan was to approach stealthily and attack when Blackbeard least expected it. The stage was set for a legendary showdown between a pirate and the law. The dawn of November 22nd, 1718, brought the final bloody clash between Blackbeard and Lieutenant Maynard. The two ships met in a violent confrontation, with Blackbeard roaring orders to his men, rallying them for battle. Maynard had devised a daring plan. His men would hide below deck, making it seem as though the ship was nearly deserted. When Blackbeard's crew boarded, Maynard's men would spring from below and take them by surprise. The trap worked. Blackbeard and his men were caught off guard, and a brutal hand-to-hand battle erupted on the deck. Blackbeard fought with all the strength of a man who knew he was facing his last stand, swinging his cutlass and firing his pistols with deadly intent. Despite his ferocity, he was overwhelmed. After receiving over 20 wounds and 5 gunshots, Blackbeard finally fell. Maynard's crew severed Blackbeard's head and mounted it on their ship's bow as a trophy, a grim symbol that the reign of terror was over. Blackbeard, the demon of the seas, had been defeated, but his legend, his mythic image, was only beginning to grow. His headless body was tossed into the water, and some say it swam around the ship 3 times before sinking, adding one final eerie chapter to his story. Though Blackbeard's body lies somewhere at the bottom of the sea, his story has lived on, transforming him from a man into a myth. His name became synonymous with fear, ruthlessness, and rebellion. To this day, tales are told of his ghost haunting the shores of North Carolina, with some even claiming that on misty nights, the sound of his voice or the faint glow of his ghostly ship can be seen off the coast. But Blackbeard's legacy isn't just about fear. He embodies a time when the seas were untamed, a wild and lawless frontier. Blackbeard represents that freedom, that defiance of authority, and that hunger for adventure that has captured the imaginations of generations. And while his treasure may never be found, his true treasure, his legacy, is carved deep into the history of the sea. He may have been a pirate, a terror, and a legend. But to many, Blackbeard remains a symbol of the mysterious and dangerous allure of the high seas.